Just a quick word about the filing and the drilling I'm doing. When I was 16, I left school at 15. Birthday was in holidays. And then at 16, I started as an apprentice at Rolls-Royce, and I was a general engineering apprentice for the first year. And then I marked 7 out. They used to mark you out 9. I marked 7 out of 9 for hand skill, so I became what was called a metal detail fitter, which is a sheet metal fitter. In the first year, I did a lot of bench fitting and a lot of machining. Personally, I preferred machining. Machining's it's just more me, but only being young, I averaged 7 out of 9. So everybody wanted to be a fitter. Nobody wanted to be a machinist. So I was then picked to be in the smaller group of fitters. That was in 80, 81. In 82, I had to, used to go, you would spend a year at the college at Rolls-Royce, and then you would go to the factory, down the works as they used to call it, and you do your training on the job training, which would be sheet metal, jet engine parts. In 82, I had to return. It was part of the Engineering Industry Training Board curriculum that I had to do a 10-week bench fitting course, which was advanced. This was during the time of the Falklands War, and we used to be at the college where they would have downstairs would be machining, upstairs would be fitting, bench fitting, and they'd have a series of sort of workshops running along a corridor with vices in a sort of U-shape, not U-shaped vices, but the room would be in a U-shape with the lecturer's desk, and then either side would be vices and metal top workbenches. So the college was very strict, and rightly so, because they had fast-moving machinery there, and you're only young, and it can get pretty dangerous, especially if you're doing things like internal, external, and surface grinding. Internal grinding is the most dangerous one. For those in engineering on here, you remember you have to wind the collet back into the center to put your new cut on. Otherwise, if you don't, it goes off like a shotgun and hits the ceiling. Now, we used to stop every morning at 11 o'clock. Because the Falklands War was on, and the lecturer used to bring in a radio, put the radio on, and we'd all listen to the news, gather round in green overalls and blue hats, so to wear these blue safety hats, to listen to the news from the Falklands War, which was my memory from that. Now, when I finished that course, I was in the Army Reserve at that time, and I then went on 2 weeks camp with the Royal Artillery, where I was number 2 on a 25-pounder field gun for 2 weeks. My book, I think I have put up on this channel, so if you're interested in reading my book, check out the video I made about about my book, which is entitled Gunner Royal Artillery, which literally is walking in the gate to walking out the gate 5 years later and handing your kit in. So yeah, it's like I said, don't give yourself a hard time if you find difficulties in filing, all right? I mean, I don't use engineering industry standard tools on any of this. If you're in the UK, I get all my files and such down at Wilkinson's. The handles are something to be desired, but then again, file handles are always something to be desired. They fall off. So like I said, I mean, perhaps they are engineering industry standard, but they're not. They don't quite. I wouldn't say it's not what you pick up at the stores at Aerospace or Rolls-Royce. Like I said, so don't give yourself a hard time about filing and drilling. Take your time, do it slowly, all right? If you do make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. I mean, I've read the instructions from Revell I mean, you get people on there call it Revell, but I've always called it Revell because they sold sweets here called, or candy if you're in America, called Revells. All right, so I read Revell's instructions, and you can email them and ask for spare parts for this. So if you don't learn unless you make a mistake. All right, you just don't. I deburr all the holes because it's old habits die hard, and it's good practice. All right. But like I said, I mean, I was a fitter for around, I did it a couple of times because I changed the machining after about 18 months at Rolls-Royce, where I worked on a what they called Sparkatron, which was a Charmil Ella Rhoda, okay? That's a separate video on that. Good little job that was. Then I left and did some other things, and then I worked in aircraft plastics where I was a fitter, which is conceptually different again. You're using a lot of resins, all sorts of things. And then I went back to aerospace where I worked on Airbus and VC-10s, which was a lot of Airbus. I used to fit roller bearings. I fitted that solidly for a year. And then on VC-10s, I used to strip. They came in to be stripped, and I worked on leading edges, all sorts, wing tanks, the whole shooting match. I don't think I ever filed anything there. I mean, this is the thing. When you do an apprenticeship, they teach you what are the basics, and they get you to file what is called 2/1000ths of an inch parallel. So it's 2/1000 of an inch square that way, that way, that way, that way, always. Yeah, and they stick a micrometer on it, and they have what is called a tolerance. So the 2/1000ths of an inch is the tolerance. All right, you can actually, if you file a piece of metal, you can actually be in there marking down at one end because it's within the tolerance, but it's not level with the other end. You don't get marked down for it, but they will tell you. And if you don't take the burr off, the guy who was the head of bench fitting was a sergeant, Royal Air Force, World War II. These guys did the RAF trade test, which was quite something. They don't do it anymore. You had to forge and fit yourself. And he used to run his thumb along the where you filed on the edge and say, I could shave with that burr. So in all of it, I take the burrs off. All right. It's necessary when I cut the deck. But underneath the deck, it wouldn't be necessary. But like I said, all the habits die hard, and it's best to work cleanly and neatly. So like I said, I mean, don't give yourself a hard time. All right. Okay. Take it nice and slowly. And the Dremel I've got here, it runs fast, and on plastic, it runs hot. So when I was drilling those holes, I had a piece of plastic melt onto the drill bit, the drill. All right. I don't call it drill bits. That it just goes against the grain. So I had pieces of plastic melt onto the drill, which I just cracked with the pliers and took them off after. All right, so like I said, nice and easy, nice and slowly. If you do buy a Dremel, the best thing to do is practice on some old sprues first, see how you get along. Because this thing, if you press too hard, it's going to rip it and melt it, and you will end up with a bigger gap in things than what you need. All right. I used a cutting disc to take a part of the deck off, but it still left a bit of a gap. But I can make that up with plastic card, fitter, etc. a bit later on. All right. Anyway, keep watching, please. All right, and I'll go through the build of this late war PT boat. All right. Okay.